Alright, good morning class. Let's continue on in our Shang Dynasty history. Alright, so let's do a quick review of what we've seen so far. Okay, when were the Shang? I can tell you they were a long time ago. They were before the year zero, so we're into BC. We call that before Christ, BC. Can you remember around the dates? The 16th century BC, so 1600 or 1600 until the year 1000 approximately. Okay? And it's really important to visualize it in what was happening around the world. Okay? So the Shang are there, okay? But they're not the oldest dynasty we have evidence of. Okay? They were during the same time as ancient Egypt, but we can see ancient Egypt goes back almost as far as 4000 BC. Okay? Ancient Sumer, that was in the Iraq-Iran area. It was sometime before the Shang, and the Indus Valley, so that's another valley around a river that was in India, had began and finished before the Shang. But maybe other popular ones, we know ancient Greeks and Romans, the Shang were just slightly before them. So that paints an idea in your head when the Shang were. Okay, yes, so there's the Shang there. A review. So we know when they were, where were the Shang? We did a lot on the geography. Okay, they were around the Yellow River Valley. Okay, so we had our Yangtze River and our Huanghe. And they were in that North China Plain and surviving because of that rich soil. The Yellow River flooded to the sides. All right, but were there any other dynasties before the Shang? Okay, was there a dynasty before the Shang? Okay, well, we don't know exactly. In history, we have stories, but we really need evidence. Okay, we have stories of other dynasties, but there's no evidence. Okay, there's a dynasty called the Xia. Okay, and they are in traditional Chinese history. They're the dynasty that started all Chinese dynasties. Okay, and the legend is it was founded by Yu the Great. But unfortunately, there's no evidence for this. There's just stories. So in history, we can't take just a story as history. Okay, we can investigate it, but there are no pieces of evidence. Nothing from that time survived. Okay, but the Shang Dynasty, what do we know about the Shang Dynasty? How do we know that it existed? Okay, because we have evidence. What kind of evidence survived? Okay, we talked about one in our earlier classes. Okay, one piece of evidence was there was bronze, that metal alloy they made. Okay, we have bronze weapons and bronze pottery, art. Okay, this might have been a pot for holding water or wood or wine. Okay, so bronze survived until this time. When archaeologists, people who study things found in the ground, when they dig in that area, the capital of Shang, Anyang, they can still find pieces of bronze. Okay, there was one other piece of evidence. Do you know what this evidence was? Any idea what kind of evidence they found from the Shang Dynasty? Dragon bones. All right, what do you think about that they found dragon bones that came from the Shang time? Very interesting, right? Well, that brings us to our topic today, dragon bones. All right, 19th century. So this is around 1880 time, okay? There was a tradition of Chinese medicine would use dragon bones. These were bones found in the ground. People would dig up, grind it, and make a tea or a soup out of it, okay? And that would help cure people, they believed, of different diseases or sicknesses. And these bones were found by Chinese farmers. They're plowing their rice fields or other fields, and they were turning up in the ground these bones. and they had strange writing on them. They had mysterious markings. So they said these are dragon bones. Do you think they were really dragon bones? Okay. Now, there was a collector called Wang Yirong. Okay, in 1989, this man, he was an expert in Shang era art. Okay, the bronze things, and he knew the Shang style of writing. Okay, the story is that Wang got sick, and he asked, or someone said, you should try dragon bones, and they brought it to them, and before they ground it up, he looked at it and he noticed the writing, and they were the same writing as the bronze pieces he was studying. Okay, so when he got well, he studied that, in fact, these dragon bones were oracle bones. They were used in divination ceremonies by Shang priests and kings to foretell events in the future. Okay, you can learn a lot about dragon bones today you can learn a lot about the Shang time by looking at the writing that they put on. Okay, now here's a real picture of a dragon bone. We'll call them oracle bones. Okay, so I'll explain what you're looking at. This is the hard part of a turtle, not the back shell, but its front. It's called a plastron. Okay, and they would priests, the religious leaders of the Shang, would write questions on it. Okay, when should we plant our millet, which is a food, or should we plant it tomorrow? They would take really hot iron rods and stick it into the plastron, and the way that it cracked, that would tell the future. They thought it was their ancestors or spirits speaking to them. Okay, and they did this many times for the 600 years that they were in power, and they would bury these in the ground, and we have lots of evidence of this. Okay, right, that's as far as our story will go. Okay, we will continue in this interesting history. Let's conclude what we've looked at today. So the Xia may have existed before the Shang, but we can't say for sure because we don't have evidence. We do have evidence of the Shang dynasty, and interestingly, that hard evidence wasn't discovered until recently, 120 years ago. The evidence is bronze, weapons and art, but we also have dragon bones, which we now call oracle bones. And priests use the writing on the bones to ask questions to ancestors. We'll come back to this idea of ancestor worship when we look at Shang religion. And another important thing that's planting the seed for our next lesson is writing. The Shang used writing. This is very important for the Shang. Not many cultures had writing at this time. Okay? People would communicate by saying things, but they didn't communicate writing things. This gives us so much information into how the Shang lived. They wrote down day-to-day things, okay? And archaeologists now can study that. Not only do they have writing, but think of what people were writing on. They might be writing on a type of leather like sheepskin, or they might be writing on bamboo, flat bamboo planks, or some homemade paper. All those things will rot fairly quick, okay? Even in a year or two or 50 years, but we're looking at 4,000 years ago. These things won't last that long. So the Shang, written on bones and written in bronze, they've survived the 4,000 years until now. And the other interesting thing about Shang using writing is, if you look at the characters, they're very similar to the Chinese writing being used today. Some of the characters are the same, and some are very similar. So we'll look at the similarities. Alright guys, I hope you found that interesting, and we'll continue our Shang on Monday. Have a great weekend.